And hello again. Welcome back to Secret Histories. I am your host, Brian Keene. If you're just joining us for the first time, either on Patreon or a few months down the road watching this on YouTube, because it's always on Patreon first for an extended time, exclusive time. In this series, what we do is we sit here on the floor in my office and we go through my books one by one in the order that they were written and published. I tell you about their creation, what went into them, how I feel about them, what impact, if any, they had on our industry, on our genre, what impact, if any, they had on me. Currently, in this series, we are in the midst of the Great Recession here in America. My marriage is crumbling. The horror small press is absolutely crumbling. The mainstream mass market publishing industry is starting to buckle. Things are getting very dire, very fast. Authors are not being paid. Publishers are going under. And the great horror collapse of the 2000s, mid-2000s, is in fact beginning. It's in full, it's not beginning, it's actually starting to be in full swing now. In our last video, we talked about Clickers 3. Today we're going to be talking about The Girl in the Glider. But in recording that video for Clickers 3, if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend you go watch that one before you watch this one. It's an emotional video. It was hard to record. It was hard to talk about. And even though we talked for about 20 minutes, it occurred to me after I had posted the video on Patreon that we did not go over all the different editions of Clickers 3. So before we get to The Girl in the Glider, I'd like to return to that real quick. I did show you these. This is the original Delirium Books edition. It was published in hardcover and a lettered edition. The lettered edition, as you can see here, had this gorgeous insert. And there were 300 limited editions and 26 of the lettered edition, which came in this tray case. This was, of course, the limited edition. But there have been many, many other editions of Clickers 3. I didn't pull them all out, but I pulled out some here for you. Delirium Books did a trade paperback. Again, as we talked about in the last video, this was actually my last book with Delirium. I believe it was Jesus' last book with them as well. This is the Deadite Press edition and the Crossroad Press edition, and they really look very, very similar. You can tell the difference, the lettering a little bit, but the other way to tell is the company logo on the side. This is Crossroad Press, Macabre Ink, the imprint they publish these under. That, of course, is the Deadite Press version, now out of print. This is the current version of Clickers 3, is Crossroad Press, Macabre Ink. All right, moving on to Girl in the Glider. As you remember from the Clickers 3 video, Jesus and I got back from the tour for the book, and I found out, in fact, that my wife and I were separating after 8 years of marriage and 8 years dating before that, so a total of 16 years together. I should note that this story does have a happy ending. My ex-wife and I are best friends. We really, really are. To the point where our significant others have been told that if they want to be in our lives, they're going to have to make their peace with, the exes being involved in the lives too. She's my best friend. I see her just about every day. We have coffee every morning. We have co-parented together. Our son was 3 when we split up. No, he was younger than that. I guess he was like 1 when we split up. He's 17 now, almost 18. Um, he's a very well-adjusted kid, and that's because he has two parents that loved him and, love each other these days, not in a romantic sense, but in a sense of friends. Um, but to go back to 2010 and tell the Brian Keene who wrote this book uh, that these things would take place, he probably wouldn't have believed you. I wrote this book to try to save my marriage. As we talked about in Clickers 3, probably not my best idea. I had a lot of things I wanted to say that I simply could not say out loud. I had a lot of things I was working out in my head, and writing was the way I've always worked things out. Before this book was written, I had never been to talk therapy. After my divorce, I began going to talk therapy, and I've gone off and on in the 15 years since, and I find it worthwhile, but I still think writing works better. But yeah, I wrote this to save my marriage. Now, I've asked her since then, because she's read it, and I said, would it have worked? She says she doesn't know if it would have worked, but it would have probably got us, talking again at least. The problem is, I sold the book to Cemetery Dance, and Cemetery Dance does not have the best record of getting books out in a timely manner. This novella was written in 2008, 2009, over the space of about, I guess it took me about 4 or 5 months, 2008 into 2009. Did not get published until 2010. People ask how much of this is true. Honestly, most of it is true. I embellished very little. I have always marketed it as metafiction, but the truth is it's mostly nonfiction, including the strange supernatural occurrences that occur in the book. It is mostly nonfiction. The only fictional part is the book has a happy ending. Real life, there was no happy ending. The glider is real. Our family still owns it. It is, my son has a sort of a basement apartment at his mother's house, and the glider is down there now. It's used as a video game bench for him and his buddies when they're playing video games on TV. I'm very fond of this one, and it is absolutely a favorite among readers. For every 4 readers that tell me The Rising is their favorite or Ghoul is their favorite, there's probably another 2 readers that tell me The Girl in the Glider is their favorite. I know pre-reader Todd Clark, he doesn't think I'll ever do better than this, and he might be right, although Todd, I will argue to my dying breath that End of the Road is better than this. But yeah, I'm fond of this one. I'm proud of this one. I think it's some of my best writing, because I put my heart into it, because it was real. You will never hear me badmouth my ex-wife, and you will never hear me badmouth this book. This book has done a lot of good for a lot of other people. Did it save my marriage? No, but it has absolutely saved other people's marriages. I can't tell you how many men I've talked to over the years that have told me they didn't know how to communicate, or they didn't know they were supposed to communicate, and they read this book and they did. Understand, the Brian Keene depicted in this book, he's a real person, and I'm not proud of him. He is a guy who focused 90% of his mental energy, his emotional energy, his spiritual energy, and his physical energy on writing all of these. And he left no time for himself, and he left no time for his family. Now, sure, on the surface, he left time for the family. They went and they did things together, and he played with the kid, and he stayed up all night with the kids so that mom could sleep. But I would sit and write all day, put my emotions into these things, my thoughts into these things. At the end of the day, I had no emotions and no thoughts to share with my wife. We might as well have been roommates rather than husband and wife. I do not blame her. I'll never blame her. The blame is on me. As I said, it did have a happy ending. But yeah, this is something that happened. The Girl in the Glider. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. I'm proud of this one. There is no singular edition of this in print anymore. However, it is included in many of my short story collections, including the complete short fiction of Brian Keene. I believe it's in either volume 2, All Dark All the Time, or volume 3, Love Letters from a Nihilist. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it's in one of those. The physical Cemetery Dance edition, there were only ever 2 published. This is the signed limited edition hardcover. 537 copies. We should also talk about Keith Minion's artwork. Beautiful, beautiful artwork in this. And he has a picture of my dog, Sam. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hard to do with one hand, but let's see if I can find it. I don't know. I guess a lot of you probably don't own a physical copy of this. You have it in the short story collections, or you have it on Kindle. Here it is. It's beautifully illustrated by Keith. If you can find a hardcover on eBay, I recommend it. This was my dog, Sam. He's long since passed. I own the original artwork for this. It's hanging on the wall in my other office. But yeah, I'm proud of this book. I'm proud that it's helped people. I'm proud of my ex-wife and myself for finding a way to make co-parenting work, to not just completely disown each other, to find out that, yeah, we didn't work as a husband and wife, but we really work well as friends. I'm proud of her. So this is the lettered edition. Not much difference. Some nice velvet there. The video's probably not picking that up. Not much difference at all, other than a different paper used here for the sig sheet. 52 of these exist. So that is it for The Girl in the Glider. I got to tell you, talking about Clickers 3 was harder than talking about this one. At this point, I moved into a rundown apartment complex. That complex will become important later, but we're not quite ready to talk about it. But the next book we talk about may in fact be tough, because it is absolutely the end of an era. It's the end of mass market horror as you knew it. It's the end of the mid-list. It's the end of Hail Satan. It's the end of that portion of my career. We are talking about Leader of the Band, the best of Hail Satan, Volume 4. And we'll talk about that in our next video. Peace.